What happened when you stopped being the therapist in your family? My phone buzzed for the 37th time in 2 hours. I know because I started counting at 3 a.m. when Mom's first text came through. Sarah, we need you. Danny's missing again and your father won't stop screaming at me. Please call back ASAP, this is serious. I stared at the screen from my tiny graduate student apartment, surrounded by half-finished dissertation chapters and empty coffee cups. The familiar knot in my stomach tightened as more messages flooded in. Dad chiming in at 3:47 a.m. Your brother is your responsibility too, Sarah. We raised you better than this. Then my sister Jessica at 4:15 a.m. Mom's having a panic attack because you're ignoring us. Thanks a lot. For 28 years, I've been dropping everything for moments like these. Racing home from college when Danny got arrested for drunk driving. Mediating screaming matches between my parents during their rough patches that somehow lasted decades. Talking Jessica off metaphorical ledges when her latest relationship imploded. I was the family Switzerland, the emotional janitor, the unpaid therapist with a direct line to everyone's problems. But 3 weeks ago, something in me finally snapped. It happened during Danny's latest crisis. He'd been kicked out of his third apartment this year for not paying rent, blown through the $2,000 Dad lent him, and was now couch surfing and asking for more money. I'd spent 6 hours on the phone that Sunday, rotating between family members like some kind of crisis hotline operator. Mom sobbed about how she'd failed as a parent. Dad raged about Danny's lack of responsibility. Jessica complained that the drama was affecting her job performance. I listened. I validated. I strategized. I researched treatment options and found 3 potential programs in our area. I drafted a family meeting agenda to discuss boundaries and consequences. Standard Sarah behavior. Then Monday morning came. I was presenting my thesis outline to my advisor, the culmination of 3 years of work, when Mom called mid-presentation. I watched Dr. Martinez's face shift from professional interest to concern as my phone rang relentlessly. I'd silenced it, but it kept lighting up through my bag. I'm sorry, I whispered, mortified. Family emergency. But when I called back, it wasn't an emergency at all. Mom wanted to process our conversation from the day before. She disagreed with one of the treatment facilities I'd found. Could I research alternatives? Also, what did I think about Dad's suggestion that Danny move back home? That's when it hit me. I was sacrificing my own future to manage other people's choices. The breaking point came that evening when I suggested the family might benefit from actual professional help, a real therapist, not their exhausted daughter who was drowning in her own responsibilities. We don't need some stranger, Mom sniffed. We have you. You're so good at this, sweetheart. You understand us. But I'm not qualified. You're better than those quacks, Dad interrupted. Besides, we can't afford therapy. You know money's tight. Money's tight, but they'd just given Danny $2,000. Money's tight, but Jessica's destination wedding last year somehow found funding. I can't do this anymore, I said quietly. They laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, Sarah's having a moment, Jessica sing-songed in the background. Now, staring at my phone buzzing with their latest emergency, I made a decision that 3 weeks ago would have been unthinkable. I turned it off. The silence was deafening. For the first time in years, I slept past 6 a.m. without being jolted awake by a crisis text. When I finally turned my phone back on Tuesday afternoon, the screen exploded with notifications. 43 missed calls. 67 text messages. 2 voicemails that were just Mom crying. I scrolled through the chaos like watching a car crash in slow motion. Mom, 5:23 a.m. Sarah, please, we found Danny passed out in the park. He's okay, but we need to talk about next steps. Dad, 6:45 a.m. This silent treatment is childish. Call your mother back. Jessica, 7:30 a.m. Seriously? You're really going to ignore us right now? Mom, 8:15 a.m. I don't understand why you're being so cruel. We raised you to care about family. The messages escalated throughout the morning, cycling between guilt, anger, and desperation. What struck me wasn't just the volume, it was the pattern. Nobody asked how I was doing. Nobody acknowledged that I might have valid reasons for stepping back. It was all about what I could do for them, how my absence was affecting their crisis management. By noon, they'd started calling my friends. My roommate Katie knocked on my bedroom door around 1 p.m. Your mom called me, she said, looking uncomfortable. She said there's a family emergency and you're not responding. She wanted me to check if you're okay. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. What exactly did she say? That your brother is in trouble and they need you, but you're going through something and won't answer your phone. She sounded really worried, Sarah. Like, crying worried. This was classic Mom, weaponizing other people's concern to circumvent my boundaries. She'd done the same thing during college when I tried to limit our daily check-in calls. Suddenly, my professors were getting concerned parent emails about my unusual behavior. My family has emergencies every week, I told Katie. Danny being irresponsible isn't actually an emergency. Katie frowned. But she said he was in the hospital? I grabbed my phone and scrolled back through the messages. Danny passed out in the park. Dad picked him up. No mention of hospitals anywhere. She lied to you, I said, showing Katie the texts. I watched my roommate's expression shift as she realized she'd been manipulated. Katie barely knew my family, but in one phone call, Mom had recruited her as a flying monkey. That evening, my Aunt Linda called, Mom's sister, whom I hadn't spoken to in 6 months. Sarah, honey, your mother is beside herself, Linda said without preamble. What's going on over there? Did she tell you I'm in graduate school? I asked. That I'm writing my dissertation? Well, yes, but... Did she mention that I spent 6 hours last Sunday managing Danny's latest crisis? Or that I've been their primary emotional support for the past decade while they've never once asked about my stress levels or mental health? Silence. Your mother says you've changed, Linda said finally. That you're being selfish. Selfish. The word I'd been trained to fear most. Growing up, wanting anything for myself was selfish. Having needs was selfish. Setting boundaries was selfish. Maybe I have changed, I said. Maybe I'm finally learning that self-care isn't selfish. After Linda hung up, clearly uncomfortable with my response, I sat in my quiet apartment and felt something I hadn't experienced in years: space to think. Space to breathe. Space to exist without managing someone else's emotions. My phone buzzed again. Jessica, fine, be heartless. But when Danny ends up dead, remember that you chose your precious dissertation over your family. I screenshot the message and saved it to a folder I'd started calling evidence. Something told me I was going to need it. Wednesday morning brought a new development. They'd escalated to my professors. Dr. Martinez called me at 9 a.m. Sarah, I received an unusual email from someone claiming to be your mother. She's requesting information about your academic standing and expressing concern about your recent behavioral changes. I wanted to give you a heads up before responding. My stomach dropped. What exactly did she say? She mentioned you're going through a difficult phase and asked if I'd noticed any decline in your work quality or attendance. She also suggested that family stress might be affecting your judgment and requested a meeting to discuss support options. I felt violated. Mom had contacted my doctoral advisor, the person who held my academic future in her hands, and essentially tried to paint me as unstable. This went beyond boundary crossing into sabotage territory. Dr. Martinez, I'm sorry you were dragged into this. My family is upset that I'm not available to manage their personal crises 24/7 anymore. There's no academic issue. I figured as much, she said dryly. Your work has actually improved lately. You seem more focused. But Sarah? This kind of interference is concerning. Do you have support resources? After hanging up, I discovered Mom hadn't stopped there. She'd somehow found my work-study supervisor's email and sent a similar message to Professor Chen, who ran the tutoring center where I worked 15 hours a week. Then she'd contacted the Graduate Student Services office asking about wellness checks for students under stress. I was furious but also impressed by the strategic manipulation. Mom had positioned herself as the concerned parent while painting me as the unstable daughter. If I reacted angrily, I'd look exactly as unhinged as she'd suggested. If I stayed silent, her narrative would go unchallenged. Instead, I did something that would have been unthinkable a month ago. I documented everything. I forwarded her emails to my personal account, screenshot every text message, and started a detailed timeline of events. If Mom wanted to play games with my professional reputation, I'd treat this like the research project it was becoming. Thursday afternoon, the flying monkeys multiplied. My high school friend Megan called around 3 p.m. Hey girl, I ran into your mom at Target yesterday. She seemed really upset about you guys not talking. Is everything okay? Another recruitment attempt. Did she mention why we're not talking? She said there was some kind of misunderstanding about your brother, and you're stressed about school so you're not thinking clearly. She's worried you're isolating yourself. I laughed, but it came out bitter. Megan, when's the last time my mom and I talked about anything other than family drama when you've been around? Long pause. Honestly? Every time I've seen you with your family, you're like, managing some crisis. Your mom's always pulling you aside to talk about Danny or your dad or whatever. Right. So when I stop being available to manage crises, and my family can't handle their own problems anymore, who's really the one with issues? By Friday evening, I'd received contact attempts from 2 aunts, 3 family friends, my former boss from my undergraduate job, and somehow my high school guidance counselor, who'd apparently gotten a Facebook message from Jessica about being worried about my mental state. The scope of their campaign was breathtaking. They'd mobilized an entire network to pressure me back into compliance. But what they didn't realize was that every manipulation attempt was just more evidence of exactly why I needed to step back in the first place. Saturday morning brought the most revealing message yet, from Dad. Sarah, your mother hasn't slept in 3 days. She's making herself sick worrying about this family. Danny's staying with some girl we don't know, and your sister won't talk to us because we can't fix this mess. You need to come home this weekend and help us figure this out. We can't function like this. There it was, in black and white. They literally could not function without their designated emotional manager. I screenshot that message and added it to my evidence folder, which now contained 47 items. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. I was highlighting a particularly dense section on therapeutic intervention models when my phone rang Sunday evening. Unknown number with my hometown area code. I'd blocked my family's numbers after Friday's revelation, but I should have known they'd find workarounds. Sarah? Thank God. It's Mrs. Henderson from next door. My childhood neighbor, the sweet woman who used to give me cookies after school. Your poor mother asked me to call. She's so worried about you, honey. I closed my textbook and rubbed my temples. What exactly did she tell you, Mrs. Henderson? Well, she said you've been under tremendous stress with school and you cut off contact with the family during a crisis. She's afraid you might be having some kind of breakdown and... Did she mention that the crisis is my 26-year-old brother refusing to pay rent and asking for handouts? Or that I've been managing their problems for a decade while trying to finish my doctorate? Uncomfortable silence. Oh. She made it sound much more serious than that. After Mrs. Henderson awkwardly ended the call, I realized Mom's manipulation had evolved. She wasn't just recruiting people anymore, she was crafting increasingly dramatic narratives. A breakdown. Tremendous stress. She was building a case for why my boundaries were actually symptoms of instability. Monday brought the nuclear option. She called my therapist. Dr. Reeves contacted me Tuesday morning. Sarah, I received an unusual voicemail yesterday. Someone claiming to be your mother left a message expressing concern about your mental health and requesting information about your treatment. My blood ran cold. She what? She said you'd become erratic and hostile toward family and wondered if I'd noticed any concerning symptoms. She also mentioned that you'd isolated yourself during a family emergency and asked if this behavior aligned with any mental health conditions. I felt sick. Mom had somehow found my therapist's number, probably through my insurance paperwork during Christmas when I'd left my bag in the kitchen, and was now trying to weaponize my own mental health care against me. She can't do that, right? Patient confidentiality? Absolutely protected, Dr. Reeves assured me. I can't and won't discuss your care with anyone. But Sarah, this level of intrusion is alarming. Have you considered that this behavior itself validates your decision to create boundaries? Wednesday afternoon brought unexpected intelligence from an unlikely source, my cousin Marcus, Jessica's ex-boyfriend who'd stayed friendly with our family despite their messy breakup 2 years ago. Dude, I don't know what's going on over there, but your family is losing their minds, he said when he called. I stopped by Sunday to drop off some tools your dad lent me, and it was like a war zone. What do you mean? Your parents were screaming at each other about whose fault it was that you abandoned them. Your mom was crying about how she failed as a mother, and your dad was ranting about ungrateful children. Jessica was there too, stress-eating ice cream and muttering about how you'd always been selfish. Marcus paused. But here's the thing, Danny was just sitting there playing video games while they imploded about him. Like, the person they're supposedly worried about couldn't care less, but they're all melting down because their referee isn't available. This was exactly what I'd suspected but hadn't been able to confirm. Without me there to absorb and redirect their emotions, they were turning on each other. The family system was collapsing because it had been built around having a designated emotional dumping ground, me. It gets weirder, Marcus continued. Your mom kept saying things like Sarah would know what to do, and Sarah always has ideas. But when I asked what they tried doing themselves, they just stared at me. Like, it hadn't occurred to them to actually problem solve without you. Thursday brought the most disturbing escalation yet. Katie knocked on my door around 8 p.m., holding her laptop with a troubled expression. Sarah, you need to see this. She'd been Facebook stalked by Jessica, who'd somehow found her profile and sent a long message. I read it with growing horror. Hi, I'm Sarah's sister. I'm reaching out because we're really worried about her mental health. She's cut off all contact with our family during a crisis and seems to be isolating herself. She's always struggled with depression and anxiety, and we're concerned she might be having an episode. As her roommate, have you noticed any concerning behaviors? We just want to make sure she's safe. Every word was carefully crafted to sound reasonable while being completely manipulative. Jessica had taken my therapeutic vocabulary, words I'd shared during vulnerable family conversations, and weaponized them to recruit my roommate as a spy. Is any of this true? Katie asked quietly. I showed her my evidence folder, now containing 62 screenshots and documents. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the manipulation attempts, the professional sabotage, the escalating lies. Jesus, Sarah. This is like stalking behavior. That night, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I started writing everything down. Not just screenshots and evidence, but the whole story. Every manipulation. Every boundary violation. Every time they trained me to believe that their emotional needs were my responsibility. If they wanted to make this a war of narratives, I'd write the real one. Friday morning, I woke up to discover they'd created a group chat without me. I only found out because Marcus screenshot it and sent it to me around 11 a.m. with a message, thought you should see this insanity. The group was called Sarah Intervention Planning and included Mom, Dad, Jessica, Aunt Linda, and somehow my cousin Beth from Oregon who I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. The messages Marcus captured were from Thursday night. Mom, 9:47 p.m., I've been researching and I think Sarah might be having a narcissistic episode. The sudden boundary setting, the lack of empathy for family crisis, the isolation, it all fits. Dad, 10:12 p.m., or maybe she's just being a selfish brat. We funded her education and this is how she repays us. Jessica, 10:33 p.m., I found articles about graduate school stress causing personality changes. Should we contact her advisor again? Maybe arrange some kind of academic intervention? Aunt Linda, 11:15 p.m., what if we showed up at her apartment? Sometimes you have to force people to get help. My hands were shaking as I read. They were literally planning an ambush, using psychological terminology to pathologize my healthy boundaries. The fact that they'd excluded me from a group chat about manipulating me was almost comically transparent. But Beth's response stopped me cold. Beth, 11:52 p.m., wait. Hasn't Sarah been managing everyone's problems for years? I remember at Christmas 2019, she spent the whole time mediating fights and researching rehab programs for Danny. Maybe she's just burned out? The chat went silent for 47 minutes. Then, Mom, 12:39 a.m., Beth, you don't understand the full situation. Sarah has always been dramatic about helping family. That's when I realized something crucial. There were witnesses to my decade of emotional labor, but my family had been so focused on their own drama that they'd forgotten other people had eyes. I called Beth directly. We'd been close as kids, but family geography and life had created distance. She answered on the second ring. Sarah. Oh my God, I was hoping you'd call. What the hell is going on over there? Honestly? I finally stopped being their unpaid therapist and they're having a collective meltdown. That's what I figured. Sarah, I've watched you manage their chaos at every family gathering for years. Last Christmas, you literally spent your vacation creating a budget spreadsheet for your parents and researching job programs for Danny while the rest of us were playing board games. Beth's validation hit harder than I'd expected. You noticed that? Everyone noticed. We just thought. I don't know, that you wanted to help? But looking back, you never seemed happy about it. You seemed exhausted. That afternoon, Beth did something that shifted the entire dynamic. She replied to the group chat. Marcus sent me another screenshot around 3 p.m. Beth, 2:47 p.m., I'm removing myself from this group. Sarah is an adult who's allowed to set boundaries with her family. Planning interventions and ambushes is inappropriate. If you're genuinely concerned about someone's mental health, you encourage them to seek professional help, you don't try to manipulate them back into dysfunction. Then she left the chat. Within an hour, I received a text from Beth. Also, I called my mom and told her what you guys are doing. She's calling Aunt Linda tonight. This stops now. The family network Mom had been weaponizing was turning against the manipulation campaign. Beth's mom was Linda's older sister and the unofficial family matriarch, someone even my parents respected. If she was getting involved, the dynamics were about to shift dramatically. Saturday brought radio silence for the first time in 2 weeks. No calls, no texts, no flying monkeys. I should have felt relieved, but instead I felt suspicious. In my family, silence usually meant regrouping, not surrender. I was right to be paranoid. Sunday afternoon, Katie burst into my room without knocking. Sarah, there are people at the front door saying they're your family. Your mom, dad, and some woman I don't recognize. They want to talk to you about an emergency. My stomach dropped. They'd actually done it, shown up uninvited to force a confrontation. Did they say what kind of emergency? Your mom said Danny's in the hospital and you're the only one who can help make medical decisions. I grabbed my phone and called the 3 hospitals in my hometown. No patient named Daniel Martinez at any of them. Then I called Marcus. Is Danny in the hospital? I asked without preamble. Danny? No, dude, I literally saw him at GameStop 2 hours ago buying some new release. Why? They were lying. Standing at my door, lying about a medical emergency to force their way back into my life. I looked at Katie, who was watching my face carefully. Call the police, I said quietly. Tell them there are people at our door using false emergencies to harass a tenant. Sarah, are you sure? It's your family. Katie, they lied about my brother being hospitalized to manipulate their way into my apartment. That's not family behavior, that's stalking. As I heard Katie making the call from the living room, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. We know you're in there, Sarah. We're not leaving until you talk to us like an adult. I screenshot it, adding it to my evidence folder, which now contained 89 items. The real war was just beginning. The police arrived in 12 minutes. I watched from my bedroom window as Officer Martinez, ironically sharing my last name, spoke with my parents and Aunt Linda on the front steps. Mom was gesturing dramatically, her voice carrying even through the closed window. I caught fragments: mental health crisis, worried sick, won't respond to family emergency. My phone rang. Unknown number. Sarah, this is Officer Martinez with campus police. I'm speaking with some individuals who claim to be your family. They're reporting that you're experiencing a mental health emergency and haven't responded to crisis communications. Can you confirm your current status? I took a deep breath. Officer, I'm fine. I blocked their numbers because they've been harassing me for 2 weeks. They told my roommate my brother was hospitalized to try to force me to open the door, but I called all 3 hospitals in their city. There's no patient named Daniel Martinez anywhere. Silence. So the medical emergency was fabricated? Yes. I can provide documentation of their harassment campaign if needed. They've contacted my professors, my therapist, my friends, and my neighbors over the past 14 days because I stopped being available to manage their personal problems 24/7. 20 minutes later, Officer Martinez called back. Ms. Martinez, I've documented this incident. Your family has been advised that further unwanted contact could result in harassment charges. They've left the premises. However, I'd recommend documenting everything and considering a formal restraining order if this escalates. After he hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment feeling something I hadn't experienced in years, protected by my own boundaries instead of everyone else's. But the victory was short-lived. Monday morning, Katie's work supervisor called her with concerns about her living situation. Someone had contacted the nonprofit where Katie worked as a victim advocate, claiming her roommate was unstable and might pose a safety risk to someone in her profession. Sarah, they're trying to get me fired, Katie said, her face pale. My boss is asking questions about your mental health and whether I feel safe living here. If I lose this job, I lose my clinical hours for my license. The sophistication of their attack took my breath away. They'd researched Katie's employer and weaponized her professional responsibilities against her. Victim advocates can't have safety concerns in their personal lives without professional scrutiny. Who called your supervisor? Someone claiming to be a concerned family friend. She said you've been making threats and isolating yourself, and that people who work with vulnerable populations should be aware of potential red flags in their personal relationships. I felt sick. They weren't just attacking me anymore, they were going after innocent bystanders, threatening Katie's career and financial stability to pressure me into compliance. That afternoon, I made 2 phone calls that would change everything. First, I called Beth. I need you to document every family gathering where you witnessed me managing their crises. Dates, specific incidents, whatever you remember. Sarah, what's happening? I told her about the false hospital emergency, the police visit, the attack on Katie's job. They've escalated to sabotage. I need witnesses who can testify that this pattern isn't new, that I've been their emotional dumping ground for years and they're retaliating because I stopped. Second, I called the law clinic at my university. If my family wanted to play hardball, I'd get professional help. I need to explore a restraining order, I told the intake counselor. And possibly defamation claims. They're systematically attempting to damage my academic and professional reputation through false statements to authority figures. That evening, my evidence folder hit 112 items. But what I found in my email made me realize the real fight was just beginning. Mom had contacted my dissertation committee chair with concerns about my ability to handle academic pressure during this difficult time. They weren't just trying to get me back. They were trying to destroy the life I built without them. Tuesday morning, Dr. Patricia Henley called me at 7:23 a.m. As my dissertation committee chair, she rarely contacted students directly unless something was seriously wrong. Sarah, I received a very disturbing email yesterday evening from someone claiming to be your mother, she said without preamble. She's alleging that you're experiencing severe psychological distress that's affecting your academic judgment and research capabilities. My coffee mug slipped, splashing hot liquid across my dissertation notes. What exactly did she say? She claims you've become erratically hostile toward family during multiple crises, that you're isolating yourself from support systems, and that she's concerned about your ability to make sound decisions regarding your academic future. She's requesting a meeting with your committee to discuss intervention options and asking whether we've noticed declined performance or concerning behaviors. I stared at my laptop screen, where I'd been working on chapter 4 since 5 a.m., the same chapter I'd been making steady progress on for 3 weeks, ever since I'd stopped being available for crisis management calls. Dr. Henley, my work has been more productive lately, not less. I've submitted 2 chapters ahead of schedule and my research is progressing normally. I'm aware. Which is why this email raised red flags. Sarah, I need to ask directly, are you experiencing any academic or personal difficulties that might affect your dissertation progress? The only difficulty I'm experiencing is my family's retaliation campaign because I stopped being their unpaid therapist. I heard papers rustling. Retaliation campaign? They've contacted my professors, my therapist, my work supervisor, my roommate's employer, and now my committee chair. Last Sunday they showed up at my apartment with a fabricated hospital emergency to try to force contact. Campus police had to remove him. Long silence. Sarah, I think you need to schedule an emergency meeting with Graduate Student Services. This level of interference could affect your academic standing regardless of your actual performance. We need to document that you're functioning normally and protect you from further disruption. After Dr. Henley hung up, I called the University Law Clinic. My intake appointment wasn't until Thursday, but this felt urgent enough for an emergency consultation. Ms. Martinez, you need to understand something, Attorney Lisa Chin said when I explained the latest escalation. Your family isn't just harassing you anymore. They're engaging in systematic defamation designed to undermine your academic and professional credibility. That's legally actionable. What does that mean? It means they're not just being manipulative, they're potentially committing crimes. False statements to employers, academic institutions, and licensing bodies can constitute defamation, harassment, and in some jurisdictions, cyberstalking. That afternoon, I received an email that made my blood run cold. It was from Dr. Janet Morrison, the Director of Graduate Student Services, requesting an urgent meeting to discuss concerns that have been brought to our attention regarding your current functioning and academic progress. Someone had contacted the administration directly. I forwarded the email to Attorney Chen, who called back within an hour. Sarah, this is escalating rapidly. They're trying to create an official academic record suggesting you're unstable. If the university opens a formal review of your mental health or academic standing, it could affect your funding, your degree timeline, and future opportunities. Can they do that? Just because my family is making accusations? Universities have broad discretion to investigate student welfare concerns. The problem is that your family has created a paper trail of concerned parties reporting worrying behaviors. Without context, it looks like multiple independent sources are raising red flags about your stability. That evening, Katie found me stress-eating cereal directly from the box while surrounded by printed emails and legal documents. Sarah, I've been thinking about something, she said, sitting down across from me. What if we flip this? What do you mean? Your family is telling everyone you're unstable because you set boundaries. But what does it say about them that they can't function without their designated crisis manager? What kind of healthy family launches a harassment campaign against their own daughter for refusing to be their therapist? I looked up from my Lucky Charms. Katie was right. The scope and sophistication of their retaliation was actually evidence of exactly why I needed to escape in the first place. Also, Katie continued, I called my supervisor back today. I told her everything, the fake hospital emergency, the police report, the pattern of manipulation. She was horrified. She said anyone who would sabotage their child's education and career over boundary setting is demonstrating the exact toxic behaviors that create the need for victim advocacy services. For the first time in days, I smiled. My family had made a critical error. They'd assumed everyone would automatically take their side because they were the worried parents. Instead, they were revealing their dysfunction to every authority figure they contacted. Tomorrow's meeting with Dr. Morrison suddenly felt less like a threat and more like an opportunity. I opened my evidence folder, now containing 137 items, and started preparing my defense. Dr. Morrison's office felt like a tribunal. She sat behind an imposing oak desk, flanked by Dr. Reynolds from Counseling Services and someone I didn't recognize, a stern woman in her 50s who introduced herself as Dr. Patricia Walsh from Student Conduct. Sarah, thank you for coming in on such short notice, Dr. Morrison began, her tone carefully neutral. We've received some concerning communications about your well-being, and we want to make sure you have the support you need. I placed my thick folder of evidence on the desk between us. Before we begin, I think you should know that I've been systematically documenting harassment from my family for the past 3 weeks. I believe the concerning communications you've received are part of a retaliation campaign. Dr. Walsh leaned forward. That's quite an accusation, Ms. Martinez. It's quite a situation, I replied, opening my folder. Since February 15th, when I stopped being available for my family's daily crises, they've contacted my thesis advisor, my committee chair, my work supervisor, my roommate's employer, my therapist, 3 of my professors, and now the administration. They've also enlisted friends, relatives, and neighbors to call me expressing concern about my mental health. I pulled out a timeline I'd created. They've told different stories to different people. To my neighbor, I was having a breakdown. To my roommate's boss, I was making threats. To Dr. Henley, I was experiencing severe psychological distress. But when campus police responded to their unannounced visit last Sunday, they claimed my brother was hospitalized, which I verified was false. Dr. Reynolds, who'd been taking notes, looked up. You contacted hospitals? 3 of them. No patient named Daniel Martinez. I also have a witness who saw my supposedly hospitalized brother at GameStop that same afternoon. I slid Marcus's screenshot across the desk. My family fabricated a medical emergency to try to force entry into my apartment. Dr. Morrison's expression shifted as she scanned the timeline. This is extensive. What triggered this was my decision to stop managing their emotional problems while trying to finish my dissertation. For context, my brother Daniel is 26 and has been financially supported by our parents while refusing to maintain employment or housing. When they demanded I research treatment programs and mediate family meetings about his latest crisis, I suggested they seek professional help instead of relying on their graduate student daughter. I pulled out Dad's text from the previous week. We can't function like this, he wrote. Not we're worried about you, or how can we help? They literally cannot function without their designated emotional manager. Dr. Walsh was reading through the communications I'd provided. Ms. Martinez, some of these messages to faculty members contain specific psychological terminology. Claims about narcissistic episodes, personality changes, academic stress causing mental health deterioration. My family has weaponized therapeutic language I shared during vulnerable conversations. They're using my own words about anxiety and stress, normal graduate school experiences, to paint me as unstable when I enforce boundaries. Dr. Reynolds set down his pen. Sarah, how has your actual academic performance been during this period? Better than it's been in years. I've submitted 2 dissertation chapters ahead of schedule, maintained my TA responsibilities without issue, and actually feel more focused since I stopped spending 20 hours a week managing other people's crises. I handed over my recent work evaluations. My supervisor Dr. Martinez, no relation, noted improved performance and focus in his latest review. Professor Chin commented that I seem more present during work study hours. Dr. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, reviewing documents. Finally, she looked up. Sarah, I have to ask, is there any possibility that your family's concerns have merit? That academic stress might be affecting your judgment about family relationships? Dr. Morrison, healthy families don't launch harassment campaigns against members who set boundaries. They don't lie to employers, contact therapists without consent, or fabricate medical emergencies. The fact that they've escalated to sabotaging my academic and professional relationships is exactly why I needed distance in the first place. Dr. Walsh nodded slowly. Point taken. Sarah, what outcome are you seeking from this meeting? I want the university to understand that any future communications from my family should be viewed with skepticism. They're not concerned relatives, they're attempting to force me back into dysfunction through reputation destruction. I pulled out Attorney Chen's business card. I'm working with a law clinic to explore legal remedies, including potential defamation and harassment claims. The room fell silent. Dr. Morrison and Dr. Walsh exchanged glances. Sarah, Dr. Morrison said finally, I think we need to document this conversation officially and put protective measures in place. What your family is doing isn't acceptable, and we won't allow external harassment to disrupt a student's academic progress. For the first time in weeks, I felt like someone with authority was actually listening. But as I walked across campus afterward, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We know you met with the school today. This isn't over. Jessica had somehow found out about my meeting and was now making threats from burner numbers. I screenshot the message and added it to my evidence folder, now at 143 items. They were right about one thing, this wasn't over. But they just made their biggest mistake yet, threatening me in writing while I was already building a legal case. That evening, I was finally making progress on Chapter 5 when my laptop chimed with an email notification. The sender made my stomach drop. Dr. Amanda Richardson, Graduate Program Coordinator. Ms. Martinez, please schedule an appointment at your earliest convenience to discuss irregularities in your student file and concerns raised by multiple parties regarding your academic trajectory. Multiple parties. They'd expanded beyond individual professors and were now coordinating their attack through official channels. I called Attorney Chen immediately. Sarah, this is serious, she said after I read the email. They're trying to create an institutional record that could follow you beyond graduation. We need to accelerate your legal response. What does that mean? It means we're filing for a harassment restraining order tomorrow morning. And I'm going to recommend you formally notify the university that you're being stalked by family members who are systematically attempting to sabotage your education. Friday morning brought a new horror. Katie received a certified letter at our apartment. The return address was a law firm in my hometown, Henderson, Martinez and Associates. No relation to me, unfortunately. Sarah, they're threatening to sue me for enabling your erratic behavior and failure to seek appropriate mental health intervention, Katie said, her hands shaking as she held the letter. They're claiming I have a professional duty to report concerning behaviors and my failure to do so makes me liable for any harm you might cause to yourself or others. I felt like I was going to vomit. They weren't just attacking me anymore, they were going after Katie's career with legal threats. A lawsuit, even a frivolous one, could destroy her licensing prospects. Katie, I am so sorry. No. Her voice was firm. Sarah, this is insane. They hired actual lawyers to threaten your roommate because you won't answer their phone calls. This isn't family concern, this is abuse. I called Attorney Chen, who requested the letter immediately. An hour later, she called back. Sarah, this changes everything. They've escalated to legal intimidation of third parties. That's not just harassment, it's potentially extortion. We're filing an emergency restraining order this afternoon. But when I checked my email before heading to the courthouse, I found something that made me realize how deep this conspiracy went. Dr. Richardson had forwarded me a concerned communication she'd received that morning. Dear Dr. Richardson, I am a licensed clinical social worker writing to express concerns about Sarah Martinez's current psychological state. While I cannot share specific details due to confidentiality, I believe her recent behavioral changes warrant immediate academic and mental health intervention. Her family has reported increasingly erratic and hostile behaviors, and I worry that academic pressure may be exacerbating underlying conditions. I strongly recommend requiring psychological evaluation before allowing her to continue in your program. Dr. Linda Morrison, LCSW. My Aunt Linda, Mom's sister who'd been recruited for the group chat, was a social worker. She'd used her professional credentials to lend credibility to their campaign, writing what appeared to be an official clinical recommendation while carefully avoiding claims that could be verified. It was brilliant and absolutely unethical. I forwarded the email to Attorney Chen and added a note. Linda Morrison is my mother's sister, not an objective clinician. She's never treated me professionally and is part of the harassment campaign I documented. At 3:47 p.m., as I sat in the courthouse waiting to file my restraining order petition, my phone buzzed with a call from Marcus. Sarah, you need to know something, he said, his voice tense. I was at your parents' house helping your dad with his computer, and I saw some stuff I probably wasn't supposed to see. What kind of stuff? They have a whole operation going. Spreadsheets with contact information for everyone in your life. Your professors, your friends, people from high school. They're tracking who they've called, what they said, and planning follow-up contacts. It's like a military campaign. My hands started shaking. Marcus, can you get photos of those documents? Already did. Sarah, there's more. They hired a private investigator to research your daily routine. They know where you eat lunch, what time you leave for campus, where you park your car. This isn't just harassment anymore. As I hung up, Attorney Chen emerged from the courthouse offices with grim news. My family had beaten us to the punch. Sarah, they filed first. Your parents submitted a petition this morning requesting guardianship due to alleged mental incapacity. They're claiming you're unable to make rational decisions about your education, finances, and medical care. The courthouse steps seemed to tilt beneath me. They weren't just trying to destroy my reputation anymore. They were trying to legally strip away my autonomy. The guardianship petition hit me like a physical blow. I sat on the courthouse steps, staring at the legal documents Attorney Chen had managed to obtain copies of, my hands trembling as I read my parents' sworn statements. Petitioners Charles and Maria Martinez request emergency guardianship of their adult daughter Sarah Elena Martinez, age 28, due to demonstrated inability to make rational decisions regarding her personal welfare, education, and family responsibilities during a documented mental health crisis. They'd attached evidence, screenshots of my text messages refusing to come home, statements from Aunt Linda about my erratic behavior, and a sworn affidavit from Dr. Henderson, my childhood family doctor who I hadn't seen in 5 years, stating that I'd always been prone to anxiety and depression and that my current behavior was consistent with a psychological breakdown requiring intervention. Sarah, this is actually good news, Attorney Chin said, though her expression suggested otherwise. How is trying to make me a legal ward of my parents good news? Because guardianship petitions require evidence of genuine incapacity. Everything you've documented for the past 3 weeks proves you're functioning at a high level. Plus, they've just created an official legal record of their harassment campaign. We can use this. She pointed to a section in their petition. Look at this, they claim you've been refusing necessary medical care and isolating from support systems. But you've been attending classes, meeting with professors, working with a therapist, and maintaining your assistantship. That's not incapacity, that's healthy boundary setting. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, court hearing Monday 9 a.m. Hope you get the help you need. Mom. They were so confident in their narrative that Mom was already sending passive-aggressive messages about the outcome. I screenshot it and handed the phone to Attorney Chin. She's contacting you directly about pending litigation, she noted. That's witness tampering. They keep making legal mistakes because they think family relationships exist outside the law. Monday morning, I sat in courtroom 3B wearing my only professional blazer, surrounded by 3 years' worth of evidence that I was a high-functioning graduate student, not an incapacitated adult requiring guardianship. Attorney Chen had organized my materials into 3 thick binders, academic performance records, employment evaluations, and documentation of my family's harassment campaign. My parents sat across the aisle with their attorney, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit who kept glancing at me with what I assumed was supposed to be paternal concern. Mom was dressed in her church clothes, dabbing her eyes with tissues. Dad sat ramrod straight in his best tie, occasionally shaking his head sadly. They looked like grieving parents trying to save their mentally ill daughter. I looked like the defendant in my own competency hearing. Judge Patricia Wu called the session to order at 9:17 a.m. This is a petition for emergency guardianship of Sarah Elena Martinez. Mr. Thompson, please present your case. Mom's attorney stood up. Your Honor, the Martinez family comes before you today out of love and desperation. Their daughter Sarah has experienced a severe psychological break triggered by graduate school stress. She's abandoned her family during multiple crises, refused medical intervention, and exhibited increasingly erratic and hostile behaviors that suggest she's unable to care for herself or make rational decisions. He gestured toward my parents. For 28 years, Sarah was a loving, responsible daughter who prioritized family welfare. Her sudden personality change, refusing to communicate with relatives, abandoning her brother during a medical emergency, threatening her own roommate, indicates a serious mental health crisis requiring immediate intervention. I watched the judge's face carefully as Mr. Thompson painted me as a delusional graduate student who'd snapped under academic pressure. Everything was technically true but completely reframed. I had stopped communicating with family, I was unavailable during Danny's latest crisis, and Katie's job had been questioned due to safety concerns. But then Attorney Chin stood up. Your Honor, Ms. Martinez is here today because she committed the apparent crime of growing up. She stopped being her family's unpaid crisis counselor, and they've responded with a systematic campaign to destroy her academic and professional reputation. She opened the first binder. Ms. Martinez has a 3.8 GPA, published research, and glowing evaluations from professors and employers. Her thesis advisor describes her recent work as exceptional, and her teaching supervisor notes improved focus and engagement during the exact period her family claims she became incompetent. Attorney Chin pulled out the timeline I'd created. What petitioners call abandoning family during a crisis was actually Ms. Martinez refusing to research rehab programs for her 26-year-old brother's latest unemployment situation. What they call refusing medical intervention was declining to manage her parents' emotional reactions to their adult son's life choices. Judge Wu leaned forward. Mr. Thompson, what specific evidence do you have of mental incapacity requiring guardianship? Your Honor, Ms. Martinez has isolated herself from all family support, refused psychological evaluation, and her behavior has become increasingly hostile toward loved ones attempting to help. Ms. Chen? Your Honor, Ms. Martinez attends therapy weekly with Dr. Rebecca Reeves, maintains a 15-hour work schedule, submitted her last dissertation chapter early, and has no history of financial mismanagement or inability to care for herself. The only hostility documented is her refusal to continue managing other adults' problems. Attorney Chin pulled out Marcus's photos of the spreadsheets. Furthermore, petitioners have engaged in stalking behavior, hired private investigators to monitor Ms. Martinez's daily activities, and attempted to sabotage her education by contacting professors with false psychological assessments. Judge Wu studied the documents for several long minutes. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Thompson, guardianship is reserved for individuals who cannot meet their basic needs or make fundamental life decisions. Ms. Martinez appears to be thriving academically and professionally. Setting boundaries with family members, even during their crises, is not evidence of incapacity, it's evidence of healthy development. She closed the file. Petition denied. Furthermore, I'm ordering all parties to refrain from contact pending Ms. Martinez's counterpetition for harassment protection. As the gavel fell, I heard Mom's sharp intake of breath behind me. For the first time in 3 weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But walking out of that courthouse, I should have known they weren't done. My family doesn't accept defeat, they regroup and escalate. The victory lasted exactly 18 hours. Tuesday morning at 6:43 a.m., I woke up to Katie shaking my shoulder urgently. Sarah, there are cops at the door. They're asking about a welfare check. I stumbled to the living room where 2 officers stood in our doorway, Officer Janet Pierce and her partner, whose nameplate read Rodriguez. Katie hovered nervously behind me in her bathrobe. Ms. Martinez? We received a call around midnight from someone reporting that you'd sent concerning messages to family members indicating you might harm yourself. We're required to do a wellness check. My stomach dropped. What messages? I haven't contacted my family in weeks. Officer Pierce consulted her notepad. The caller, identified as your mother, said you sent texts saying you couldn't take it anymore and that everyone would be better off without you. She was worried enough to request immediate intervention. Officer, I can show you my phone. I haven't sent any texts to my family. This is part of an ongoing harassment situation we've already reported to campus police. I grabbed my phone and pulled up my message history. The last text to any family member was from February 28th, a simple "I need space" to mom. Nothing since then. Officer Rodriguez frowned. Ma'am, do you have any other devices you might have sent messages from? No, and even if I had, why would I send concerning messages to people I'm actively avoiding? I showed them the restraining order paperwork. I was in court yesterday fighting their petition for guardianship. They lost. This wellness check is retaliation. Katie stepped forward. Officers, I'm her roommate and I work in victim advocacy. Sarah's family has been systematically harassing her for setting boundaries. They've contacted her professors, her employers, and now they're filing false reports to manipulate law enforcement into forced contact. Officer Pierce looked troubled. Ms. Martinez, we still need to follow protocol. Have you experienced any thoughts of harming yourself? No. I'm in therapy regularly, I'm productive in my graduate program, and I'm the happiest I've been in years since I stopped managing other people's problems. After 20 minutes of questions and protocol, the officers left with a report that I was functioning normally with no immediate safety concerns. But the damage was done, they'd succeeded in forcing their way back into my life through emergency services. I called Attorney Chen immediately. They're weaponizing the system, I told her. Using false crisis reports to bypass the court order. Sarah, this is actually criminal. Filing false reports to law enforcement is a felony in this state. We're adding this to your harassment case. But by 10 a.m., it got worse. Dr. Morrison called with barely contained frustration. Sarah, the university received a formal complaint this morning from the State Board of Social Work Ethics alleging that you've been making threats against a licensed social worker. They're requesting information about any disciplinary actions or mental health concerns in your student file. My hands started shaking. Dr. Morrison, this is about my Aunt Linda. She used her professional credentials to write fake clinical assessments supporting their guardianship petition. I never threatened her, I reported her unethical behavior to my attorney. I understand that, but the State Board doesn't know the context. They just received a complaint alleging threats against one of their licensees from a graduate student with documented mental health issues. At 2:15 p.m., Katie came home from work with news that made me realize how sophisticated their new strategy was. Sarah, my supervisor got a call today from someone claiming to be from the university's crisis intervention team. They said you'd been reported for concerning behaviors and asked whether I'd observed any warning signs that might indicate you were a threat to yourself or others. But there is no crisis intervention team calling about me. Exactly. When my supervisor called the university to verify, they had no record of any such call. Someone impersonated university officials to try to get information about you through my job again. I sat down heavily on our couch. They weren't just using their own identities anymore, they were creating fake authority figures to legitimize their harassment campaign. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, emergency family meeting happening at your parents' house right now. Overheard your dad saying if Sarah wants to play legal games, we'll show her what real consequences look like. Thought you should know. For the first time since this started, I felt genuinely afraid. They weren't trying to manipulate me back into compliance anymore. They were trying to destroy my entire life. Wednesday morning at 7:23 a.m., I was reviewing legal documents when my laptop exploded with notifications. Someone had created a Facebook page called Concerned Friends of Sarah Martinez and was systematically contacting everyone from my past. My high school chemistry lab partner, college roommates, professors from undergrad, people I hadn't spoken to in years were suddenly messaging me with concern about posts they'd seen. I clicked over to the page and felt my blood turn to ice. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. Photos of me from family gatherings looking tired or stressed, paired with captions like Sarah's family is desperately worried about her mental health decline and please share if you've noticed concerning changes in Sarah's behavior. They'd even included a photo from my cousin's wedding where I was mid-blink, making me look disoriented. The page had 63 followers and was growing. Someone, Jessica, based on the writing style, was actively responding to comments with detailed concerns about my isolation and erratic behavior. She created an entire narrative where I was the beloved family member who'd suddenly become hostile and unstable, and they were the heartbroken relatives trying to save me. But the most chilling part was the pinned post. Sarah's family has been advised by mental health professionals that social media intervention may be necessary when someone is experiencing a crisis. If you have information about Sarah's current state or location, please contact us immediately. Her safety is our primary concern. They were crowdsourcing surveillance. I screenshot everything and called Attorney Chen, but she was in court until afternoon. Campus was starting to feel unsafe. What if they've recruited students to monitor my movements? At 11:30 a.m., I got my answer. Professor Williams from my contemporary literature seminar pulled me aside after class. Sarah, a young woman approached me yesterday claiming to be a family friend. She said your relatives were worried about you missing family therapy sessions and asked if I'd noticed any changes in your classroom participation or academic work. My stomach churned. What did she look like? Early 20s, blonde hair, said her name was Jennifer. She seemed genuinely concerned and mentioned she was a psychology student at State. Jennifer was Jessica's roommate. They'd recruited her to pose as a concerned friend and gather intelligence from my professors. The sophistication was terrifying. They were using people I'd never met to circumvent the harassment order. Professor Williams, I'm being stalked by family members who can't accept my decision to set boundaries. That woman isn't a friend, she's part of their surveillance network. His expression shifted from confusion to alarm. Sarah, should I be contacting campus security? By afternoon, Attorney Chen called with updates that made everything worse. Sarah, they filed appeals to both the guardianship denial and your harassment petition. They're claiming new evidence of deteriorating mental health, including the Facebook page they created as proof that multiple people are concerned about your welfare. They're using their own harassment as evidence that I need help. It gets worse. They've also filed a complaint with a graduate school accusing you of academic fraud. They're claiming your recent improved performance is inconsistent with your historical patterns and suggesting you're having someone else complete your work. I felt like I was drowning. Lisa, they're systematically destroying every aspect of my life. My education, my reputation, my safety. Sarah, I need you to listen carefully. This level of coordinated harassment meets the legal definition of stalking and conspiracy. We're going federal with this. The FBI handles cases involving interstate harassment campaigns and identity fraud. That evening, Katie found me stress-eating cereal while frantically documenting the Facebook page before they could delete it. Sarah, I've been thinking, she said, sitting down with her own bowl. What if their escalation is actually desperation? What do you mean? Think about it. A month ago, they had you managing their problems daily. Now they've had to hire lawyers, private investigators, coordinate multiple family members, create fake social media campaigns, all to try to force you back into being their therapist. The amount of time, energy, and money they're spending proves how much work you were actually doing for them. She was right. Their retaliation campaign was more elaborate and time-consuming than a full-time job. They'd essentially had to build a replacement infrastructure for the emotional labor I'd been providing for free. Also, Katie continued, every person they contact now knows they're unhinged. Your professors, your friends, random acquaintances, everyone can see this is crazy behavior from desperate people. My phone buzzed with a notification from the Facebook page. Someone had commented on my photo, this seems really inappropriate. If you're genuinely worried about someone's mental health, you call professionals, not create public social media campaigns. This looks like harassment. I smiled for the first time all day. Not everyone was buying their narrative. But then I saw Jessica's response, Sarah's therapist and doctors are already involved. We're doing everything we can through proper channels, but she needs community support during this difficult time. They weren't just lying about me anymore. They were claiming my therapist was part of their conspiracy. Thursday morning brought a revelation that changed everything. My therapist's office called at 8:47 a.m. with an urgent message. Ms. Martinez, this is Janet from Dr. Ree's office. We need you to come in immediately. Someone has been impersonating you to access your treatment records. My coffee mug shattered against the kitchen floor. What do you mean impersonating me? Yesterday afternoon, a woman called claiming to be you, saying you'd lost your phone and needed to verify some information from your file for insurance purposes. She knew specific details about your appointments and treatment history. Our receptionist almost gave her information before realizing the voice didn't match our records. I was in Dr. Ree's office by 10:30 a.m., hands shaking as she explained what had happened. Sarah, whoever called knew your appointment times, my name, and even referenced specific topics we'd discussed. They asked about medication recommendations, crisis intervention protocols, and whether I'd documented any safety concerns. They were fishing for ammunition, I realized. Looking for any official record they could twist to support their narrative. Dr. Rees nodded grimly. What's more concerning is how they obtained that information. Either someone close to you has been collecting details about your therapy, or they've accessed your records through other means. The answer came to me like a punch to the stomach. My insurance paperwork. During Christmas, I left my bag in the kitchen when I helped Mom with dinner prep. My insurance cards, my therapy receipts for reimbursement, everything was in there. Sarah, we need to report this to both the police and the state licensing board. Impersonating a patient to access medical records is a serious crime. But when I called Attorney Chen with this development, her news was even worse. Sarah, the Facebook page escalated overnight. They posted what appears to be a psychiatric evaluation report with your name on it, claiming it shows concerning patterns of paranoid ideation and family relationship dysfunction. But I've never had a psychiatric evaluation. Exactly. It's completely fabricated, but it looks official enough that people are sharing it as evidence of your mental health crisis. We're looking at identity fraud, forgery, and medical document falsification now. I rushed home and logged onto the Facebook page, which now had 127 followers. There it was, a 3-page document on letterhead from Midwest Psychological Associates detailing my supposed Axis 2 personality disorder with narcissistic and paranoid features. It recommended intensive family therapy and medication compliance monitoring. The sophistication was breathtaking. They'd created an entirely fake psychological evaluation, complete with clinical terminology and official formatting. Someone had spent hours crafting this forgery. But they'd made one critical mistake. The report was dated March 15th, last Tuesday, and referenced appointments I'd supposedly had throughout February. I'd been documenting my actual whereabouts so meticulously that I could prove I'd never been to any Midwest Psychological Associates. Katie. I called. I need you to see this. She read over my shoulder, her face growing paler with each paragraph. Sarah, this is insane. They've created an entire fake medical history for you. The report detailed supposed sessions where I'd exhibited grandiose thinking, victim mentality, and inability to accept family feedback. It recommended immediate intervention before my deteriorating reality testing led to potential harm to self or family members. But the final paragraph made my blood run cold. Patient has expressed increasingly paranoid beliefs about family members conspiring against her academic career. Immediate intervention recommended before delusional thinking escalates to concerning behaviors. They were creating a paper trail to justify their harassment campaign as necessary mental health intervention. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Sarah, call me ASAP. Something big is happening. When I called back, his voice was urgent and scared. They're planning something for tomorrow. I was helping your dad with his computer again and saw emails about comprehensive intervention and final options. They'd been in contact with someone called Dr. Patricia Morgan about an emergency assessment. Who's Dr. Patricia Morgan? I think she's a psychiatrist. The emails mention involuntary commitment procedures and temporary custody arrangements. Sarah, I think they're trying to have you institutionalized. The room started spinning. They weren't just attacking my reputation anymore, they were building a case for forced psychiatric hospitalization. And if they succeeded, everything I'd worked for would disappear. Friday morning at 5:47 a.m., I was awakened by pounding on our apartment door so violent it rattled the windows. Katie and I both jolted awake, and through the thin walls we could hear multiple voices outside, not just my parents this time. Sarah Elena Martinez, this is Dr. Patricia Morgan with Crisis Intervention Services. We have a court order for emergency psychiatric evaluation. Please open the door. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone to call Attorney Chen. It went straight to voicemail, too early, even for lawyers dealing with family warfare. Katie, call 911, I whispered. Tell them people are impersonating crisis workers to force entry into our apartment. But when Katie spoke to the dispatcher, the response chilled me to the bone. Ma'am, we show a valid emergency psychiatric hold order issued at 11:47 p.m. last night for Sarah Martinez at your address. The crisis team is authorized to be there. They'd actually done it. Somehow, using their fabricated psychological evaluation and fake crisis reports, they'd convinced a judge to sign an emergency psychiatric hold. In less than 12 hours, they'd weaponized the mental health system against me. Dr. Morgan's voice came through the door again, more insistent now. Ms. Martinez, we're here on behalf of your concerned family members. We just need to complete a brief assessment. If you don't open the door, we're authorized to request police assistance for entry. I called Marcus frantically. He answered on the first ring. Apparently he'd been expecting this call. Sarah, they left your dad's house at 4 a.m. with some woman in a white coat. Your mom was crying, but she looked excited. Like she was finally getting what she wanted. Marcus, I need you to do something for me. Can you get photos of anything they left behind? Computer screens, documents, anything that shows how they orchestrated this? Already on it. Sarah, there's something else. I heard your mom on the phone yesterday talking about 72-hour holds and medication compliance. They're not just trying to get you evaluated, they want you committed long enough to mess up your dissertation defense deadline. The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. My dissertation defense was scheduled for March 28, 11 days away. A 72-hour psychiatric hold would become a longer commitment if they could present enough evidence of my instability. Miss the defense deadline, lose my funding, watch 3 years of work disappear. They weren't trying to help me, they were trying to destroy my academic career so completely that I'd have no choice but to come home and resume my role as family crisis manager. Through our peephole, I could see Dr. Morgan conferring with 2 police officers who'd apparently just arrived. She was a thin woman in her 50s wearing scrubs and a white coat, holding an official-looking clipboard. Behind her stood Mom, Dad, and Jessica, all wearing expressions of grave concern that would have been Emmy-worthy performances. Ms. Martinez, Officer Rodriguez called out, the same cop from Tuesday's welfare check. We really need you to cooperate here. Dr. Morgan just wants to complete a standard assessment. But something in his tone seemed different. Less convinced. I wondered if he was starting to see the pattern. Katie grabbed my evidence folder and handed it to me with a fierce expression. Sarah, you document everything better than a court stenographer. You have 3 weeks of proof that you're completely functional. Use it. I took a deep breath and opened the door, holding my thick folder like a shield. Dr. Morgan, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Before we begin any assessment, I need you to know that I'm being systematically stalked by family members who created false documentation to support this evaluation. I have extensive evidence of their harassment campaign, including the fabricated psychological report they posted online yesterday. Dr. Morgan's professional smile faltered slightly as I handed her Attorney Chen's business card and the timeline I'd created. Ma'am, I'm here based on legitimate concerns. Concerns based on forged documents and false crisis reports. Officer Rodriguez, you responded to their fake suicide threat Tuesday. Yesterday they impersonated me to try accessing my actual therapist's records. This psychiatric hold is part of their retaliation for losing a guardianship petition Monday. I saw Mom's face flush red behind Dr. Morgan. Dad was staring at his shoes. Jessica looked like she wanted to disappear. For the first time in a month, I felt like I was fighting back instead of just defending. But Dr. Morgan was still holding that clipboard, and the court order was still valid. Dr. Morgan studied my evidence folder for 12 minutes while my family stood in our hallway growing increasingly uncomfortable. The fabricated psychological report, the timeline of harassment, the screenshots of their coordination campaign, I watched her professional demeanor shift as she absorbed the scope of their operation. Ms. Martinez, she said finally, I need to ask your family to wait outside while I conduct this evaluation. Absolutely not, Mom protested. We're her support system. Ma'am, standard protocol requires private assessment, Dr. Morgan cut her off. Please wait in the lobby. For the next 45 minutes, Dr. Morgan asked me detailed questions about my daily functioning, academic performance, and mental state. I answered each one while pulling supporting documentation from my folder, recent assignment grades, work evaluations, therapy session receipts, even my grocery shopping lists to demonstrate consistent self-care. When she asked about my relationship with my family, I handed her Marcus's photos of their surveillance spreadsheets and the fake Facebook page they created. Dr. Morgan, does it seem logical that someone experiencing a psychiatric crisis would be capable of documenting harassment this systematically while maintaining a 3.8 GPA and meeting all professional obligations? She closed her clipboard. Ms. Martinez, I'm not finding any evidence of the psychiatric emergency described in this court order. Your effect is appropriate, your thinking is organized, and your behavior is entirely rational. In fact, your documentation skills suggest exceptionally clear thinking. I felt tears of relief starting. What happens now? Now I need to have a very different conversation with your family. 20 minutes later, Dr. Morgan emerged from our apartment with Officer Rodriguez. Through my peephole, I watched her address my parents with barely controlled professional anger. Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, the emergency psychiatric evaluation has revealed no basis for involuntary commitment. Furthermore, the documentation your daughter provided raises serious questions about the validity of the psychological report you submitted to obtain this court order. Dad's voice was defensive. Dr. Morgan, we're just trying to help our daughter. Sir, what you've done is potentially criminal. Filing false reports to obtain emergency psychiatric holds is a felony. The psychological evaluation you provided appears to be fabricated, which constitutes forgery and fraud. Officer Rodriguez stepped forward. Dr. Morgan, based on what we've observed, I'm recommending criminal charges for filing false police reports and harassment. This has gone well beyond family disagreement. I watched through the peephole as Mom's composure finally cracked. This is insane. We're her parents. We raised her. She's supposed to help us. Mrs. Martinez, Dr. Morgan said coldly, adult children are not required to manage their parents' emotional problems. Your daughter is thriving professionally and academically. The only crisis here is your inability to accept her healthy boundaries. 3 hours later, Attorney Chen called with news that felt like victory. Sarah, the district attorney, is filing charges. Criminal harassment, filing false police reports, identity fraud for the medical impersonation, and forgery for the fake psychological evaluation. Your family is looking at serious jail time. But the real victory came at 4:23 p.m. when Dr. Morrison called from the university. Sarah, after reviewing everything with our legal department, the university is issuing a formal protective order barring your family from campus and all academic-related contact. We're also fast-tracking your dissertation defense to next Friday to prevent any further interference with your graduation timeline. That evening, as Katie and I ordered celebration pizza, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Family emergency meeting disbanded early when the lawyers explained they could all face felony charges. Your parents are talking about how did it get this far? Jessica locked herself in her room. Danny asked if this means he needs to get a job now. For the first time in a month, I laughed until my sides hurt. The final text of the day came from an unknown number at 11:47 p.m. We're sorry. We just wanted our family back. Mom. I screenshot it, added it to my evidence folder, now containing 203 items, and then did something I'd never imagined possible. I deleted their number and blocked it without responding. Some bridges are meant to burn. 6 months later, I successfully defended my dissertation. Dr. Henley called my research groundbreaking work in family systems theory, which felt beautifully ironic. My parents received 18 months supervised probation and mandatory therapy. Jessica moved across the country for graduate school. Danny got that job. And I learned that stopping being everyone's therapist isn't selfish, it's survival. The best part? I sleep through the night now, because my phone doesn't buzz with other people's crises anymore. Turns out, they figured out how to function without me after all. They just needed the right motivation.